Welcome to Glass in Session. I'm your host, Val. Thank you for joining me. In the last episode, I told you about the very first region I think of when I think about the importance of lakes to wine regions and their resulting styles. This week, I shall admit, I knew pretty much nothing about this lake, didn't know anything about it or the regions surrounding it. You see, my forays into Germany's wine regions have only gone as far as what was mandatory for passing tests. That's right. There are 13 wine regions in Germany, last time I checked. Also, the last time I checked, they are hard, and I don't spreche. So, by the path forged via this podcast, I persisted nonetheless. I persisted into the land of Sekt in season 16, the Austrian region of Neusiedlersee last week, and now I row this boat ashore of this lake that I couldn't even find on a map before writing this. That's right, dear listener. If this is new to you, we explore together. Where are we going? If we pick up where we left off last week at Neusiedl am See in Austria, we're going to drive west across Austria toward the Rhine Delta. We're going to come to a large body of water in about 7 hours or so, between about 411 to 455 miles, depending on which route you take. You can stop and have lunch in Munich, or you can take the route with fewer turns through Innsbruck. Either way, you're going to arrive at an absolutely gorgeous lake that borders Germany to the north and east, a little bit of Austria to the south, and Switzerland to the west. Oh no, this isn't just any lake. It is Europe's second largest in terms of water volume. And worldatlas.com tells us that it's Central Europe's third largest lake if we're talking surface area. This big-ass lake is called Lake Constance or Bodensee. Remember, Z is lake, S-E-E-Z, Bodensee. And it is here at the foot of the Alps at an altitude of almost, 250 feet. But anyway, at the altitude of almost 250 feet where the Alpine Rhine flows, where once upon a time, in an ice age, a long, long time ago, the Rhine Glacier did what glaciers do, carved out this big honking body of water and let ice melt do the rest. Now, just a little bit more history coolness, and we'll get to these surrounding wine regions. The last glacial period, which was about 10,000 years ago, is when the two sections of the lake, still identified as separate sections today, really, the upper section and lower sections as Obersee and Untersee, respectively, became one body of water with lots of islands, too. Some do consider the upper and lower sections that I just mentioned, as well as the Zierrhein, the part of the Rhine that connects the two bodies. Some people consider these three separate bodies of water. Hey, whatever is easier for you. I'm going to call it one with 2 or 3 parts. Why not? But there are actual vineyards not only along the lake, there might be some on the islands. Shall we find out? Now, the wine regions. Let's just get into it. The German wine regions along the lake cover much of the eastern shore, as well as the Constance Peninsula. This is the Baden wine region, a tiny area north of the Austrian border, and the town of Bregenz, snuggled right into the corner as part of the Württemberg wine region. The only German wine region I've ever visited, really, but not this part of the Württemberg wine region. But thanks to staying with a friend outside of Stuttgart. Hi, Mari. But first, the Baden region near Bodensee. While Baden itself is Germany's third largest and southernmost, it is divided into 9 growing areas or districts boasting over 300 individual vineyard locations or Einzellagen and 16 collective or large vineyard sites. Despite Baden being overall warm, what is considered growing zone B or blessed by the sun in German wine speak, there is quite the variety of wines to be found throughout the region. And what I mean by growing zone B is that when the grapes are harvested in Germany, they must have a higher sugar content on the Oxley degree scale. So that's all that means. But despite all of this, there are still more white grapes grown here, 61% white to 39% red as of 2022 on the winesofgermany.com website. The most prolific grapes grown here in this part of Baden are the Müller-Thurgau and Pinot Noir. You're going to hear those 2 grapes a lot. Everything around this Lake Constance, whether it's German, Swiss, or Austrian, is most likely going to be Müller-Thurgau or Pinot Noir. Oh, like I said, the vines, they don't just grow lakeside, my friends. Let's catch a ferry to Vegetable Island or Reichenau. This UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2000 may be nicknamed Vegetable Island. Yes, Vegetable Island. I love it. But for centuries, this was grape growing central. I don't know if they ever called it Grape Island, but they should. So let's peep a little history on our way to the monastery's oldest cellar, where the smallest independent cooperative in the region has been crushing their grapes from their 18 hectares of vines since 1896. This island is also notable for being among Germany's southernmost vineyards, on an island in Europe's second most voluminous lake. Didn't see that coming, did you? As I mentioned, Vegetable Island has a long history of grape growing thanks to, and get out your wine history bingo cards, monks. These monks of the Benedictine variety were the first to plant vines here in 818. In the 840s, the vines were rocking so hard that Abbot Strabo imported him some vine workers. And why do you think the vines do well here? The lake! This is what this whole season is about. Vines near lakes. We've talked about the heat sink before, where the lake retains warmth throughout the winter, as well as reflecting sunlight back onto the vines. This is so important for temperature moderation, which aids in staving off late spring frosts and early frosts in the fall. And again, this region is, remember, blessed by the sun, which is ideal for ripening grapes. Vine plantings, however, did peak in 1913 on this island at 140 hectares. So we're about at half of that now. So how about that? Vines by the lake, vines on an island in the lake. We're going to swim south a little bit to Württemberg's little corner of lakeside vineyards. Overall, Württemberg, as a growing region, is Germany's fourth largest. Red grapes rule here, with 65% of the vineyards planted with some really interesting grapes, including the Trollinger, considered the, quote, national drink of Württemberg and a local favorite, so beloved there's a no-kidding Trollinger marathon. Take that, Bordeaux. There's a Trollinger marathon every single year in Germany. Now, of course, you're going to find the Pinot Noir and the Meunier, but also something called Lemberger, which I actually got to have in a German restaurant right here in Colorado Springs. That's right. We're not all loose chickens and dirt roads here. White grapes also grow in the Württemberg area, like the Riesling and the Kerner, which is really a Trollinger Riesling cross. If you're a rosé lover, then you're in the right place. Here it's called Schillerwein, where, what the heck, just blend red and white grapes together, then ferment the suckers together and make it a team effort. Why not? Why not for a unique kind of rosé? Now, for the Bavarian part of German Lake Constance, there is a Lindau, where there are two wine growers, both organic, both farming there for over about 50 years now. And between the moderating effects of the lake itself and the warm wind called the Föhn, it's not spelled F-U-N, fun, it's F-O with the little umlaut over top, H-N, or some people call it F-O-E-H-N, but it's like Föhn if you look it up on Forvo. This is also a beautiful grape growing climate, and the location is you're at the foothills of the Alps. Again, Müller-Thurgau, Pinot Noir grow here, but so does Solaris, which I believe we talked about in the Belgian wine episode last year, and a grape called the Pinotin, P-I-N-O-T-I-N. New grape to me, it's a Regent Cabernet Sauvignon cross. That about sums up the German wine regions on the east side of the lake. On the west side of Bodensee, or Lake Constance, we have the Swiss wine regions from the German-speaking cantons of Schaffhausen, St. Gallen, and Thurgau. They're all found just west of the lake, yet all of the German-speaking wine regions in Switzerland only accounts for about 18% of Switzerland's already small vineyards population, if you will, or production. We do know that Pinot Noir and Müller-Thurgau rule these cantons' wine regions, and I found a little bit of juju on some of the vineyards near Lake Constance from the Thurgau region, so let's start there. For example, we can trace winemaking in this area back to Roman times, because of course we can, and if you have your wine history bingo card, we got monks. As is common in many European wine regions, monasteries were responsible for the promotion, if not survival, of vineyards here. Thurgau's region used to be covered with vines, more than 2,000 hectares around 200 years ago. Today, there are only about 240 hectares where Lake Constance and the Rhine are responsible for that moderate climate, as well as the soils common to glacier-carved areas like moraine and some sands and clay. The vineyards themselves hug the westernmost North Fork, if you will, of Lake Constance, as well as some decent chunks a little bit to the west and a little bit of the south. 60% of the plantings here are going to be red, with 40% being white, comprising a whopping 2% of Switzerland's vine surface. Fun fact, the Müller-Thurgau grape has roots here in this canton in more ways than one. It was one each, Hermann Müller in 1882, who crossed the Riesling and Sylvaner to give the wine world Rivaner, or Müller-Thurgau, named for Müller and his home turf of Thurgau. Moving over to Schaffhauser, or the Schaffhausen wine region, we have a whole 3% of Switzerland's vines, but here, red rules, with 69% of the region's 480 hectares of vines being dedicated to red grapes, and 57% of all the vines are Pinot Noir. So more than half of those 480 hectares of vines in Schaffhausen are Pinot Noir. This isn't called Blauburgunderland for nothing. That's right, Blauburgunder is the German word for Pinot Noir, like blue Burgundy grape. Even though this canton does border Bodensee, it is pretty dry here, and the climate is quite moderate. This is mainly due to a rain shadow provided by the Black Forest. Schaffhausen does have 4 subregions. Stein am Rhein is the furthest east of the 4. It is the closest to the lake, but it really gets some moderation from the Rhine, as does the area around the town of Rüdlingen and looks like Buschberg and Reat. Couldn't find them in Forvo. I apologize for my pronunciation of those, but of this subregions, that's the closest one to the lake. These regions, as well as the big sister Klettgau further west, that's where we would find the largest of the German-speaking regions as a proximal or bordering vineyards go, or contiguous vineyards. All of these regions, however, big sister Klettgau and all the other little regions I mentioned, they're all known for Pinot Noir as well as Müller-Thurgau. The last Swiss region we're going to talk about is St. Gallen, and we can trace this area back to Roman times as well, wine history bingo, and we can thank the monks for the monastery's role here in keeping the wine trade alive in the Middle Ages. Like Thurgau, like Schaffhausen, St. Gallen also takes its wine region name from the name of the canton. This is further south than Thurgau and on the southwestern edge of Lake Constance. It has about 200 hectares of vines, with about 70% being planted to red grapes, again looking at Pinot Noir and Müller-Thurgau here. Now, this region benefits from the Bodensee as well as its position in the Rhine River Valley. So that warm, fun wind I mentioned earlier, and apparently crap soils make great grapes. Okay, the website says poor soils. Poor soils is touted as a benefit here. Why? Because on these steep slopes, the vines have to really dig deep to take root. This is one of those cases where struggling vines may equal lower yield, but the quality is much better. All that energy is focused on that smaller number of grapes. This is why you see vineyard owners cutting grapes off, doing the pruning. You don't want these diluted, watery grapes. You want all that, the good polyphenols and all those compounds concentrated in the smaller number of grapes for better quality. Now, this is St. Gallen, only 1% of Switzerland's vineyard surface area, but it's made up of 4 sub-regions. There's the St. Gallen Rhine Valley, which is the largest of the 4, and it benefits from those moderating effects of the Rhone and Bodensee. Then there's Sargenzner land, which boasts German-speaking Switzerland's highest elevation vineyard, which benefits from not only the Rhine River, but nearby Lake Wallen. In fact, there's a couple of vineyards here that you can only get to by boat. So again, talk about lake effects, or that might be a river effect. St. Gallen's Lake Zurich subregion is the furthest west of the 4 and benefits from, you guessed it, Lake Zurich. This area is known for a white wine, actually, called a Rauschling. That is the grape. It's a Swiss specialty, Riesling. I swear to God, I'm not drinking. I had like a half a glass of wine with lunch, and that was it. So Rauschling is a Swiss specialty that was popular before Müller-Thurgau was a thing. And although that grape Rauschling is a Swiss specialty now, say that 5 times really fast from the German-speaking cantons in Switzerland, it was actually more well-known in the Baden and Württemberg regions in Germany centuries ago, where we started this whole thing across the lake. There's one wine region remaining bordering Lake Constance, and it belongs to Austria. That's right. It's down south of the lake. This Austrian federal state of Vorarlberg is where Austria's share of Bodensee's lake border is also a named wine region within the Burgenland growing area. According to AustrianWine.com, one of my favorite websites, there used to be about 500 hectares of vines in this region, mostly in the Alpine Rhine Valley. However, the phylloxera plague kind of did the region in, as did competition not just from other German wine regions, but from other wine regions of nearby countries. Now there's only one vineyard here in Rötis. It's Rothis, O with little umlauts. It looks like Rötis. Here in the Vorarlberg wine region, you can find crisp white wines made with Pinot Blanc, the Müller-Thurgau, all throughout this thing, Gruner Veltliner, as well as reds from Pinot Noir, and sparkling wines are also made here. Vorarlberg was named an official winemaking region in 1999, but don't worry, its winemaking history does date back at least to the Middle Ages. There is the Nachbauer winery here, which is organically certified, and they are still using the 600-year-old vaulted wine cellar where they crush the grapes and bottle their wine. So while the grapes grow on the mountain and along the lake, we've already talked about grapes in the island with some of the other regions. Here's something cool that happened about 5 years ago. A winemaker, one East Joseph Muth, took 1,000 liters of red wine, put it in a steel tank, 1,000 liters of white wine, put it in a steel tank, plopped it right into Lake Constance near Bregenz. I'm not kidding. Just buried him in the lake. The name of the project is called Deep Rush, or Project Tiefenrausch, in which he and a team of experts, an international team of experts, I should say, were studying the effects of high pressure on the submerged wine, as well as the constant temperature that the lake was allowing the wines to stay at. Nobody was allowed to know where exactly the tanks were, but as long as they didn't interrupt shipping or fishing or other activities, hey, that's cool. They did require an international agreement to even field this project, and we do know that the barrels or the tanks were about 60 meters deep into the lake. And then every couple months or so, the wine was tasted and evaluated, with the red wines requiring a little bit more aging, as is standard in, regular oak barrels on land or tank or cement or whatever you're aging your wine in. I have linked Vorarlberg travel article on this if you can read German, as well as the winemaker's website, also in German, where you can actually buy one of the 1,299 bottles that were made from these wines, which are said to be intensely aromatic thanks to the clean and secluded aging technique. Now that is one lake effect we haven't covered this season. So we've got vines near the lakes, vines on islands, vines you got to take a boat to get to, and how you got using the lakes to age the wines, because what the heck, why not? So let's put a bow on this, because I feel like I'm losing my voice. The last 3 episodes of this season's lake-themed fun were focused on wine regions almost defined by the lakes they are near. This week was wild because I found the lake first, and then I went, oh, there's vineyards nearby. Let's see who they belong to and how they are impacted. Granted, they may not be the most well-known of Germany's, Switzerland's, and Austria's wine adventures, but if you've been listening to Glass in Session for any amount of time, you probably know that if everyone else is doing it, I'm not. So go on, have your Bordeaux episodes, whatever. If I ever do a Bordeaux episode, it's going to be about stuff in the middle. It's not going to be about, right bank, left bank, go on with your bad self. I'm going to do the stuff that hopefully nobody else is doing. I'm all about the fringe here, and I love finding out things that are less mainstream. And the same goes with wines. When I go to a winemaker, what's your thing? What's the thing that you do that nobody else does? I hope you too are enjoying discovering these fringy things too. And what I really love is when I post something like this and you get back to me and say, oh yeah, I was there, or I'm going there. So that's really cool. People are discovering these things. And on that note, I want to thank you for clicking play and discovering whatever weirdness I have every couple weeks for you. I value this precious spot in your download feed like you don't know. And so if you like what I'm doing here, if you like the fringy stuff, please share this episode or any of the weirder ones that you think others would enjoy. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast so you don't miss the next episode, which is, I believe, somewhere in Italy. Can you guess where? In the meantime, you can always reach out to me via email, val@glassinsession.com, or on the socials. I always say, pick your poison, Blue Sky at Glass in Session. Really good wine peeps over there, and some new people that I have yet to meet. Vino with Val on Threads and Instagram. You'll see Glass in Session with the trademark in my bio. That's right, I own the trademark. I'm also on Spoutable at Glass in Session. I'm Vino with Val on Pinterest and on Facebook /Glass in Session. Connect with me on LinkedIn, Valerie Caruso, DWS, CWE, FWS, letters, numbers, wine stuff, and audiobook narrator, which reminds me you can find this podcast and any of the latest audiobooks I've narrated on Audible. There is smartass cat content, and I've got a little video of him sleeping on the chair behind my little booth here that I'm going to post to social media eventually, Nebelung_smoke_show on Instagram. And I have a TeePublic store where you will find a Glass in Session podcast swag. It is linked way at the bottom of my show notes and on my website and on Smokey's Instagram site. This week, I'm not reading ads for weed gummies, therapy apps, or sneakers. So get yourself some swag. It's a small way to support the Winecast. And for those of you scoring yourself some wine history bingo or hashtag CorkDorkalicious swag, thank you so much for your support. There are always sales on the site. I think the CorkDorkalicious thing is one of the things that I get the most comments on. So look out for those sales and get you some CorkDorkalicious shirts. Glass in Session is a production and registered trademark of Vino With Val, LLC. Music is Write Your Story by Joy Stock. Website is glassinsession.com/podcast.